wondering how I got into this mix.
Welcome to the Conscious Resistance Weekly Update. My name is Derrick Broze, and today is Friday, September 30th. It's been a beautiful week for me. I've been doing this the last 2 weeks now through Facebook on Friday afternoons at 5 p.m. Eastern, basically covering the most important stories that I've written about this week or that I've seen this week that I think you guys need to know, because I'm aware that many of you are busy and have full-time jobs and families, etc., and don't spend as much of your time perusing the news as often as I do and paying attention to activism, what's going on in the world. So I try to take that information that I write about and that I share and filter it back to you guys in a easy to take in format. I try to keep these down to about 30 minutes, so we're going to cover quite a bit today. I've got five main stories that I want to tell you guys about that I've written articles for. And before we get into that, I do want to remind you that you can always support me by going to theconsciousresistance.com, and you can see all the other essays and videos and interviews from myself and from other people who are part of the team. You can check out music videos. You can join the team if you have something to say, either through vlogging, essays, or your own interviews. And you can follow us on the Conscious Resistance Network on Facebook and subscribe to our YouTube channel, which is where we post all these videos. And of course, you can follow on Twitter as well if you want to follow me, DBros Live Free. So I got all that stuff out of the way now. Let's talk about what's going on in the world. Probably the biggest story that I think you should pay attention to today, one of the biggest things happening in the United States at the least, is the fact that the U.S. Senate and the House, Congress, the U.S. Congress has overridden President Obama's veto of the 9/11 Families Bill, which will allow the 9/11 families, victims of the 9/11 families, to sue nations like Saudi Arabia. Now, if you haven't been paying attention to my coverage of this, I will post these links for you to keep up. But essentially, it's just a bunch of bullshit. Let me just say that first of all, okay? First off, these nations and their leaders, which are just concepts, are just imaginary. We are all individuals. Some of us bow to these leaders. Some of us say that we support their authority and that we value that authority. Others of us, though, do not value that authority and don't want anything to do with it. But in the end, we're still ultimately subject to the outcomes of that authority. So I want to start off by saying that, but when it comes to building these nations and as far as their ability to be legitimate, these nations, they partner with other nations, basically other rulers who've taken over geographical areas, and they claim as their own and say, hey, we have a legitimate authority to tax and to imprison you and to do whatever we want as long as you're living here. Those people come together and they say, hey, you don't sue us for the horrible things we do, and we won't sue you. So maybe you're going to commit war crimes, or maybe you're going to, commit wars of aggression, and there will be unintended consequences to these acts of aggression and these wars. But ultimately, you can rest easy knowing that your allies and the other nations will not hold you accountable. So President Obama, George Bush, Bill Clinton, all the past presidents who have done for at least the last 50 to 70, really 100 years of the U.S.'s involvement with the world through the CIA, all those people who've been involved with overthrowing governments and installing puppet dictators, they've been able to do that knowing that they have diplomatic immunity. And essentially that means that the courts of these other nations cannot, even if they wanted to, they cannot hold them accountable. And the way we've seen this play out in the past is people like Henry Kissinger, who is wanted for war crimes in several different nations around the world. There's actually been an incident where, I believe it was in France, they tried to serve a warrant on Henry Kissinger, but they were unable to do so because of this same thing, diplomatic immunity. So all that means is one rule for the rulers and one rule for the ruled. We're better than you. If you commit crimes, we will hold you accountable, we will lock you in cages, and we will defile your reputation and your value as a human being. But if you work for the government, if you work for the state, then you get something known as diplomatic immunity. So that's what we're dealing here with this 9/11 bill. The 9/11 families and many 9/11 truth researchers for years have pointed a finger at Saudi Arabia, at the Israeli government, and elements of the U.S. government as well. And essentially, the families have been trying to say for years, there's something to this. We need to look further into this. There should be a new investigation, or we should investigate the fact that Saudi elements of the Saudi government helped fund these attacks, helped fund 15 of the alleged 19 hijackers. So the families are looking for answers. I'm not saying that suing Saudi Arabia is going to bring all the truth about 9/11, but the beautiful thing is that it could hold some people accountable. And the truly telling thing, as I was just saying about diplomatic immunity, is the response from President Obama and the response from the White House. It really shows you that they don't care about the U.S. government or the 9/11 families. They couldn't give a shit. Obama says that this sets a dangerous precedent. It's a mistake. And he said, quote, "If we eliminate the notion of sovereign immunity, then our men and women in uniform around the world could potentially start seeing ourselves subject to reciprocal laws." Basically what he's saying is, we did a bunch of bad shit around the world. We've bombed children. We've started illegal wars. We've imprisoned people. We've tortured people. The U.S. is continuing to do these things despite most of the American media forgetting about it. And they don't want to be held responsible for it. So they're saying, sorry, 9/11 families. Yeah, I know. We know you want justice and you'd like to sue the Saudis and maybe try to get some more information or, some sort of justice out of the horrible 9/11 attacks. But if we do that, they're going to turn around and sue us for all the fucked up shit we did. Excuse my language, but it's the truth. And that is why I would say it's time for each of us to let go of this need and this belief that the U.S. government, the United States as a nation, whatever that concept means to you, is some beautiful, wondrous place that is not guilty of a lot of these crimes that the U.S. government officials like to accuse other nations of. Have you noticed that? We don't talk about the bad things our allies do. Saudi Arabia is, responsible for human rights violations around the world. Saudi Arabia treats women like shit. They treat homosexuals like shit. They're, completely bigoted nation. But instead, we tell you about the dangers of Iran and North Korea and these other places that are either not cooperating with the United States or they don't have resources that the United States is willing to negotiate for. Maybe this bill could truly change the relationship between the Saudi government and the U.S. government, as some people have suspected. I honestly don't think it's that far. You always have to look beyond the veil. And I posted about this yesterday on Facebook that we have to remember the amount of manipulation that takes place in the deadstream media, the formerly known as mainstream media. The amount of manipulation, not only that they play on and prey on your fears and promote division, but the realistic aspect that the U.S. government, and the CIA particularly, but definitely probably other spy agencies, they embed within media agencies, major media agencies, the Associated Press, UPI, Reuters, as well as the newspapers themselves. And this has been going on since at least the 50s. And don't think it's stopped at any point now. So a lot of times when you're getting information out there and they're telling you that, the Russians and the U.S. are fighting, or the Saudis and the U.S., there's a strained relationship, I don't buy it. I really don't buy it. It all depends on whether you're going to, how much of that mainstream worldview you want to buy. The TV tells you one version of the events. And you have to peel back that layer and look and see how much of what they're saying is actually truthful. And if what they are saying to you is truthful, are the reasons that they're saying it's happening, are those factual? Or are there other deeper reasons that we can find? Sorry to go off on a tangent, but I think it's important to remember to dissect the influence that the media has on us and the direction we're headed. Next couple stories are going to deal with police violence in America, and it's not just about, here's another shooting, but you can rest assured there was more people shot by the police this week. But this is more to do with the violations of the police and the United States and how we as a people can fight back. So check this one out. A new report details that the ATF, the Bureau of Alcohol and Tobacco and Firearms in Chicago, overwhelmingly target black and Hispanic males for drug stings. I wrote this for Activist Post, as most of my articles are, and you can check it out there. Basically, this report by the University of Chicago and Columbia Law School, they found that three different drug stings that they were investigating, they basically were able to provide evidence that the ATF, at least in the Chicago area, and you can guess it's probably happening elsewhere, specifically target black and Hispanic neighborhoods to go into these neighborhoods to target people for drug stings and what is specifically known as a reverse drug sting. Now, I know many people don't know about what a reverse drug sting is, so I'm going to lay the facts on you right now. I've written about this for a while. I have some sources that are actually in prison because they've been locked up behind reverse drug stings. And just like the FBI and other agencies like to entrap people and essentially create terrorism, they find some maybe some unstable person who's posted a couple of crazy things on the internet, right? And then they send in an informant, somebody who's also been caught for drugs or some other crime and is trying to get out of that crime. And they say, hey, to the informant, we'll pay you some money or we'll drop your charges. All you got to do is catch one more person for us. We need to catch a terrorist, okay? We found this guy. He seems a little unstable. He's been talking about maybe he's got some sympathy to ISIS. How about you go in there, pretend to be a recruiter for ISIS and tell them you can get them bombs and weapons and things, and they go in and they promote these ideas, and as soon as that unstable person or maybe that angry person or just somebody who's righteously angry but choosing this path of violence, as soon as they act like they're interested, the police then arrest them, and then they report on all the major media, and your friends and your family get scared further because they say, guess what, we caught another terrorist. This shooting, they may have been tied to radical Islam, but guess what, you don't look deeper and find out and realize, actually, these people were connected to FBI agents. These people were trained by FBI agents, where the FBI agents provided the weapons. This is a very similar thing, except for it is related to drug stings. These are called reverse drug stings. And what this shows is basically what they'll do is the same thing. They go into a poor neighborhood, they find somebody who's already had a crime, and they say, you want to get off those drug charges? Bring us one more person. And that person, the confidential informant, will go try to recruit somebody and say, hey, I know where there's a stash house. There's a shitload of weapons worth millions of dollars. There's this amount of drugs worth several $100,000. And the person will sort of convince them to show an interest in going and robbing this place, basically trying to steal these drugs and weapons. And as soon as the person shows interest, they are then arrested and they are charged with the amount of attempted theft of the weapons and the drugs, right? Even though they never committed the robbery, just the intent alone. This is the pre-crime stuff. You may say, well, these are bad people. They're going into neighborhoods, and that person was going to commit terrorism. All they needed was the right, ability to do so. Or that person was going to rob somebody eventually. I'm glad they're off the streets. But here's the real kicker. So the people get charged with the amount of drugs and the amount of weapons supposedly in these houses, even though the crime never took place. The weapons and the drugs don't even exist. The whole thing is made up. Yet they go and charge these people under the made up amounts of drugs. They're like, oh, well, we told them that there was going to be 3 tons of cocaine in that house. So 3 tons of cocaine, that's this amount of charges. So then they're able to charge these people for the maximum amount of time. They always seek, my research has shown, and really some great reporting from USA Today, Brad Heath, he's been following this, and I'm really just kind of following on what he's been doing. But it showed that they specifically target black communities, poor communities, and they always try to make the amount of drugs and weapons that the person is, allegedly going to steal enough that they will get a minimum of 15 years in prison. So, they're just maliciously going into poor neighborhoods, and the review by USA Today showed that 91% of people locked up under these stings were racial or ethnic minorities. The large majority were black and Hispanic. The head of the Deputy Assistant Director for Field Operations of the ATF, of course, he says that they're not profiling anybody. They're targeting the worst of the worst. Trust me, and if you don't trust me, do your own research, but trust me in this, and I'll post some more links for you to check out. These are not bad people. I'm in constant communication with several people who are locked up behind this, who are hoping that the release of this new report that shows the corruption in Chicago will actually help them get their charges dismissed. Because that's the good thing, is some judges are actually waking up and saying, you know what, these people were obviously targeted, and we can't allow them to sit behind bars, and they're actually overturning charges. So fuck you, ATF, and your shady ass politics. Fuck you for trying to lock up good people who are out there struggling. It's not a race thing. It's not a poor thing. But I guarantee you, the neighborhood that I live in right now, 5th Ward of Houston, is one of the poorest neighborhoods in Houston. It's what they call a food desert. I can go out here right now. This is the kind of neighborhood that is being targeted. Like my neighbors in this neighborhood, the people that I see walking around to the corner store, walking the streets, these are the kind of people, the human beings that are targeted by the ATF and the other agencies of the federal government. So thank you to Brad Heath of USA Today, and thank you to the people who are doing this report. Hopefully we'll have more updates coming soon, and some more people will be released, because as I say in this article, true justice will not happen until every single person who's been locked up behind bars due to reverse drug stings is finally set free. The next story of police abuse deals with social media, the thing we're using right now. Documents reveal widespread abuse of social media spying tools by California cops. And again, everything I'm telling you here, the location is pretty irrelevant. Yes, that last story was in Chicago. This one is about California. But the cops, they have militarized weapons. They've got riot gear. They've got more tools than you can even imagine to spy on you every single way you can think of. They can remotely turn on your phone camera right here. They can remotely turn on your microphone down here. They can turn on your computers. It's just, I won't even get into it right now, but I've written a lot about it, so you should be pretty informed. But this specific new topic deals with the release of thousands of pages of documents that the American Civil Liberties Union of California acquired after filing a lawsuit against, filing an open records request against how many police departments? 63 police departments, sheriffs, and district attorneys across California. And they found that at least 20 of those agencies that actually responded are in possession of social media monitoring tools. Now, many of you are going to say, of course, the police are monitoring social media. And if you're an activist, I guarantee you're aware of this because, in Houston, we definitely are. We know that the Houston Police Department actively follows my Facebook. They actively follow the Conscious Resistance, my YouTube channel, and the Houston Freethinkers. I've been told this directly to my face. There's no conspiracy theory or no anything like that. They monitor my behavior. They monitor all activist behavior, though. This is what we're living in. We're living in 1984, except it's 2016 going into 2017, and most of America's accepted it, and they don't see that all the technology we're surrounding ourselves are the telescreens that George Orwell talked about in 1984, that the helicopters that were flying around, those are the drones. We are in this stage of total digital surveillance by the state. And as the surveillance state so does the police state. And the police are more than happy to build networks that allow them to monitor us not only in the real world, but in the digital world. And the ACLU writes, we found no evidence in the documents of any public notice, debate, community input, or lawmaker vote about the use of this invasive surveillance. And no agency produced a use policy that would limit how the tools were used and help protect civil rights and civil liberties. So basically what you got here is all these police departments in California, and again, assume that your local police department has this, especially if you live in a major city. They're using tools that have names like Media Sonar, X1 Social Discovery, and Geophedia. These are the ones being specifically used in California. And it allows them to basically search for keywords. So if they're like, oh, let's see Black Lives Matter Houston, or the Houston Freethinkers, or Derrick Broze, or somebody posting, fuck Obama, or whatever phrase they want, basically, they can target that, and then it pulls up all the posts right there. And if you don't think that Facebook and these social media platforms are happy to cooperate with the cops, you're just not paying attention, because everything that you have logged, for instance, I recently just got a smartphone. This is how I'm doing this recently. All this shit is new to me. When you're typing a message to your friend, if you're using Facebook Messenger or Facebook, if you say the word tonight or a time, Facebook pops up and says, do you want to set a reminder? Or if you say ride, the little Lyft thing or Uber app pops up and asks you if you want to do that. That shit scares the hell out of me. And it's because they're listening to your words. They're monitoring your language. They're searching for keywords and trying to make it convenient and easy for us. We have to balance the ease of technology and the power of technology with our level of safety and our fight for security. Thank you, Tyler, for paying attention to my updates. I appreciate that. So let me give you some specifics now about what's happening in California. The records show that Geophedia's marketing materials refer to unions and activist groups as overt threats and suggest the product can be used in ways that target activists of color. At least 13 California law enforcement agencies have used or acquired Geophedia, and I'm planning on filing an open records request specifically about this aspect. I have several going on with HPD. They told me for one of my requests it was going to cost $100,000 in 12 years. I guess I cast too wide a net. But this is not the first time that we've learned that the police in California are using social media monitoring to target activists. Some of you may remember reading a story earlier this year talking about a threat score system. And basically what happened is it was revealed that Fresno police have a $132,000 contract with Intrado Incorporated for a program known as Beware. And Beware basically scans all of your social media updates. It scans, your credit records, your arrest records, just everything they have on you. and then it assigns what they call a threat score based on like red, yellow, or green, I think it was. You would be given like a certain score. So then when the police encounter you on the street, you know, they might already be seeing their little score system and be like, oh, this person's red. So for me, for example, I'm a felon from 10 years ago for drugs. So does that mean when I get pulled over, if the police are using this beware thing, they're going to say, oh, he's an activist. He talks actively against the police. He's confronted the HPD chief. He has a felony record. He's been arrested several times. Approach with caution. Red level threat or whatever. This is how they view the people. You know, it's not about protecting the people. It's about demonizing us. And I do think we're seeing the creation slowly of as they build this police and surveillance state. I do believe we will move towards probably a national police force eventually. And likely, if the police violence continues, they might even get to the point that they get the people calling for a national police force. That problem, reaction, solution thing. One more police-related story that I think you guys should know, and then we're going to talk about the Dakota Access Pipeline. Beginning tomorrow, October 1st, North Carolina police can block release of camera footage. So let me tell you about that. I called on 2 questions. Thank God you're a threat to the state. Thank you. I enjoy being a threat to the state. Thanks for covering the California. Did you hear the Oakland privacy successfully got NSA out of the Oakland Police Department? I did not hear that, brother. Please send me some information on that, and maybe we can do a video or an interview and talk about that to show people some of the successful examples. So this next story, as I said, beginning tomorrow, October 1st, in North Carolina, it becomes law that the police now have greater discretion when it comes to releasing dash cam footage and body camera footage. So this has been signed by North Carolina Governor Pat McCrory. He signed it 2 months ago, and he basically said that it's about respecting the constitutional rights of the officer. Well, yeah, what about your rights as a person, and your desire to not be abused by a police? And, I'm sure this is just going to make it more difficult for activists to actually get the video records they choose to seek. Dash camera footage, police vehicle, and body camera footage are currently public record in North Carolina and available via public records request. However, beginning October 1st, the law will state that the release of police footage will now depend solely on law enforcement. And if requests for footage are denied by law enforcement, you can go ahead and appeal this before a judge. So think about it. Now, not only when you file open records requests, they can already be kind of expensive, lawyer fees and, printing fees and all these things they try to get you for. But now they're saying, well, you can try to get the record. If we say, oh, nope, that's covered under the new law, you're not allowed to get that anymore, you can go appeal that before a judge. How much money do you think that's going to cost? How long do you think that's going to take? So you got your buddy getting killed on the streets or abused in the streets, and they want you to wait months to go through this whole appeal process, this legislative process. Oh, you don't have the money, sorry. Yeah, this is protected. This is protecting the officer's constitutional rights to security. Fuck that. You are a public servant, dude and ma'am. You are a public servant. When you're in public serving the public, as this whole job is supposed to be, at least that's the way we're told it is growing up, you have no protection. You know what I mean? Your protection is that fucking gun and the taser on your hip. That's your protection. Your protection is supposed to be your training that you go through so that you know how to deal with difficult situations. Yes, I'm not sitting here saying fuck all cops. I have family members who've been cops, but I hate this idea that people are like, you just sympathize and empathize with the cops because they're out there doing a tough job. They're putting themselves at risk every day. I'm pretty sure they knew that's what they were getting into when they signed up. It wasn't like, hey, come be a cop. Everybody loves you, and it's just going to be, nice rainbows and cupcakes on the street every time you go out. No, there's people out there who don't like cops, and I'm not saying that's a good thing, but there's people out there who are committing crimes who are hurting inside. They're hurting inside. They need the conscious resistance. And they are lashing out with violence, with crimes. And I'm not talking about non-violent bullshit crimes like smoking weed or shooting heroin or selling drugs or, legal, voluntary, consensual prostitution, but actual crimes of violence. And so the police do put themselves in harm's way when they go out there. But they know that. So I'm not going to give them any extra, I'm not going to give them a fucking pat on the back because they have a tough job or a dangerous job. They knew what they were signing up for. It's your job as a human being out there, officer, to recognize that you are supposed to hold yourself to a higher standard. I mean, I'm personally for abolishing the police as we know them now, and I think that we could change things so much better if we localized and we had community defense associations and different ways to organize that didn't involve this monopoly on force and violence that the police currently maintain. And I know some of you guys understand that. These police, they can get away with abusing you. I saw one, I think I talked about this last week, an El Paso cop like shot some dude that in the back of the head while he was handcuffed. And he said he was resisting. The officer got off work for a while, and then he got his job back later. Don't worry, guys, he got his job back. What other job out there, what other profession is there that you get to beat somebody up, shoot somebody, and then get your job back? Or, at the least, the public rushes to defend you and make sure that, no, don't talk shit to the cop yet. We can assume the person must be bad. They're black, too, or they must have been committing a crime. They must have been up to no good. That officer, though, he was just doing his job. I'm sure he was just following orders. No reason to be upset at him, guys. He's just following orders. It's time for us to wake up from this whole following orders and, just acquiescing to the bullshit. We're human beings. Me, you, everyone listening out there, people listening to this later, the officers on the streets, the victims of police violence, we are all human beings, and we have to make a choice, a decision that working together in unity, especially in those heated moments when you're on the streets or when you're watching those videos and you see the police shooting somebody, like the one yesterday with the 6-year-old kid, when you see that shit and you just want to throw something, or you want to just start saying, fuck, kill all the cops, or, whatever, you feel that anger, that righteous anger. And on the other side, the people who love the police and they see the riots or the protests and they feel like they're justified, this is why we need law and order. We need to get past that, man, and see that these institutions, they're archaic, they are going out of fashion, and you can either be ahead of the curve and be with the cool kids and realize that violence has no place in our future, that the application of force and the monopoly on force has no place in our future, and that division has no place in our future, that holding on to these false identities of race and identities that separate us, whether that you separate yourself by the type of person you are. Maybe you're a hippie and so you can only hang out with hippies, or maybe you're a redneck so you can only hang out with rednecks, or you're like Donald Trump so you can only hang around Trump supporters, or maybe you're the Bernie crowd. Whatever it is, these are all fucking false labels. You're a human being at the end of the day. I love you, I care about you, and I want us to get past this. I'm sorry to go on a rant here. Actually, I'm not sorry. This is the place to do the rants, I guess. So moving on to the next story. Militarized North Dakota police defend pipeline against unarmed water protectors. I wrote this one just Thursday morning. And basically, for those who've been keeping up, you know that there's been constant violence at the site of the Dakota Access Pipeline in North Dakota as the Standing Rock Sioux, the Red Warrior Camp, the Sacred Stone Camp, and all the other supporters from around the nation and around the world, really. They've got supporters from Norway, from all across Canada, everywhere, from down in South America, Latin America. And it's just an ongoing occupation, basically trying to continue to fight the pipeline. We're still doing action here in Houston. Houston stands with Standing Rock. Check that out. We're doing a benefit show tonight if you're in Houston, raising money and also collecting donations so we can go back on October 21st. But on Wednesday, there was about 150 water protectors praying and holding ceremony at 2 different construction sites where they're building the Dakota Access Pipeline. They successfully held ceremony and prayer at one of the sites. They were there for about an hour. Whenever airplanes and helicopters started showing up and flying overhead, the caravan of about 60 cars is what I saw. 60 different cars. They drove to the other site and they started praying, and they were there for about 40 minutes. And when they began to leave, all of a sudden these police vehicles come running, and you can see the videos in this article below. And again, I'll post all the links once I finish. They showed up in those Bearcat, Humvee-style vehicles. They're called MRAPs, mine-resistant ambush protected vehicles. Many of us who've been protesting and activists for a long time, we've seen these on the streets. They come with the LRAD, which is the sound cannon thing on top. They didn't use it, but it looks like they have one ready to use. And the first time that these vehicles showed up was just this past Tuesday here, and it seems to be now that they're stepping up their game. They're moving towards acceptance and using these vehicles. You can see it right here in the video. Using these style vehicles, they've brought them now twice in the last week, and we can only assume that the police and the security forces that are being hired to defend the pipeline are basically sending a message like, we're stepping our game up, we're not backing down. And obviously the Standing Rock Sioux and the Sacred Stone Camp and all the warriors from across the world are not going to stand down either, because they truly are recognizing. I've been saying this, I've been writing this. If you may be hearing me say this and feel like you're listening to a broken record, but I think more people need to understand it. This is not just a fight about the pipeline. This is a fight about two different worldviews. One of them that we could associate with those who think of the seventh generation. And I'm not even talking specifically just about Native people or just about indigenous people, but individuals who understand that the actions we take today, in this moment, in every moment that exists right now, it's going to affect future generations. And those who choose to live in a way that thinks about that seventh generation, that thinks about how do my decisions today affect that future generation? Will they be able to survive? Will they have clean water? Will they have clean air? Will they have an oppressive government still? Because it's not just about protecting the environment. It's about recognizing if you want your grandchildren and your progeny to have a future, we have to recognize the value in taking down the state and fighting against all the machinations of the state, the corporate entities, and all the various institutions that interlock to fight against our freedom. So I do want to emphasize that this is not just about the pipeline or just this specific pipeline or just the oil itself, but different worldviews, one that values a holistic approach to living, that wants to have a balanced body, a balanced mind, balanced heart, and be in balance with the planet itself, and also those who are only thinking about now and who I believe are being manipulated to support oil and to support other unsustainable practices and sources of energy, but also just unsustainable lifestyles that we see promoted. It's time to get past that. We have to do more than just live in the moment in some sort of egotistical fashion, but actually find balance in the moment by choosing to get right within ourselves, to heal ourselves, and to understand that the fight against the pipeline is the same struggle that takes place within each of us every single day. And now let me explain that. Essentially, what I believe is that the struggles we see taking place in this world today, the struggles that are taking place all around the world, are the same struggles taking place within each of us, but they're being reflected outwardly into the physical world. So the sooner that we choose to work on ourselves, to find balance within ourselves, and I am nowhere near this. I'm not sitting here trying to talk to you guys like I've found balance. I've got a lot of hang-ups, a lot of issues, a lot of insecurities, a lot of fears, but I know that in addition to going and supporting the pipeline fight directly, in addition to exposing corruption, in addition to exposing the state, one of the strongest actions I can do is to work on myself and to keep understanding myself and to keep finding out how to be a better person every single day. And at that same time promoting that in all my brothers and sisters. And when that happens, and as that takes place, we're going to see more empowered, beautiful people rise up and take on these projects like the pipeline, like the brutal police, like the fascist people parading around like our leaders. All these things are distractions, and I promise you there are much more important things to pay attention to in the world. I've got one more news story and then another little topic, and we'll be done for the day. Thank you guys for watching. This one is interesting because it's another topic that I don't see anybody else talking about. Global investors call on 16 global food producers to divest from factory farming. So what's this about? Factory farming, many of us understand that factory farming is destructive to the environment, to animals, to our lives itself. Well, investors under the name the Farm Animal Investment Risk and Return have organized about 40 investors into a campaign that they are calling for raising awareness about environmental and health risks associated with continuing to support factory farming and the over-reliance on animal agriculture. Now, this one's about diet, so I expect a lot of you to get your panties in a twist and to get your jimmies all rustled, because people are so sensitive when they hear you have a fucking destructive diet. Investors worth trillions of dollars have launched a campaign calling on the world's 16 largest food companies to begin investing in plant-based protein to combat environmental health risks associated with animal agriculture. This group of investors collectively manage $1.25 trillion in assets, including the fund arm of a bunch of companies that you probably don't know about, but basically these are some big shot investors. Now, their main drive is, of course, hey, if we get ahead of the curve and recognize that the world is going to shit due to the over-reliance on industrial farming and animal agriculture, if we get ahead of the curve and encourage businesses to wake up to that and to start supporting plant-based protein of all different varieties, we can make a lot of money. So I don't necessarily trust the people who put out this report, but the things they're saying are factual. And they're saying that, there's a lot of risks associated with factory farming and with farming beef and animals that take up so much land and that use so much water. This causes deforestation. Practices such as close confinement and genetic manipulation focused on high production at the expense of welfare. Public health problems due to overconsumption, and supply chains that rely on exploitative and unsustainable practices, which are inherently more susceptible to disruption. And not to mention that by supporting these industrial factory farmings, you're also supporting all the crap like the GMO stuff and the Monsantos and the abuse of the animals, the abuse of the animals, the abuse of the animals. Yes, there are animals being abused for your diet if you eat meat. I hate to say it, it's the reality of it. Unless you're raising them yourself, you can't really, I don't know. Figure that out in yourself. You got to write your own contradictions in your own mind. I'm not here to do that. I'm just spitting information. The investors encourage the companies to research alternative sources of plant-based proteins such as dairy-free milks, grains, legumes, nuts, seeds, macro and micro algae, and meat substitutes. And they also cite a recent study by Oxford University which concluded that if public health and environmental risks associated with increasing demand for animal products are not addressed, it will cost $1.6 trillion globally by 2050. And they say imbalanced diets such as diets low in fruit and vegetables and high in red and processed meat, processed antibiotics, injections with false things are responsible for the greatest health burden globally and in most regions. Now, I know some of my more conspiratorial-minded followers and friends, they look to things like this and say, this is just the United Nations trying to turn us away from meat so that all our men get weak and we don't have any protein and then we can't fight back. Maybe there's some element of that. Maybe there, I saw the UN report and they even mentioned it in this study about how insects could be an alternative source of protein for the future. And I saw a bunch of kind of anti-UN people freaking out like, oh, the United Nations wants us to eat insects. They want us to eat bugs and they're trying to put us to death. Look, I believe in Agenda 21. I believe that the government and the people behind the governments use environmentalism to promote fear, control, regulation, manipulation, and basically degradation to our spiritual selves. But there's no denying the impact of animal agriculture. There's no denying the impact of industrial factory farming. So here's a tip. What I've been doing, what I try to do is to go to the grocery store less. Go Google your city, farmers markets, farmers, even if you got to take a little drive or whatever, go meet these farmers, talk to them directly, and maybe you'll be lucky and you'll find an organic farm close to you. Maybe not. Maybe it'll still have pesticides. Clean the hell out of it, but take your money directly to the farmers and to the people who are producing and growing these things. Stop giving this to these big chain grocery stores that have to ship things from miles and miles, thousands of miles away, and they're also supporting these same systems that we're talking about. Go to a farm that you can see what they do. You can see how they treat the animals if you're going to continue to eat meat. You can see how they, grow their crops and whether they use pesticides or not. I mean, we really have to take steps to empower ourselves and to begin freeing our hearts and minds and not relying on other people and other institutions to do something for us. Now, we're done with the news. Last two things I want to talk to you guys about. First off, does anybody want more of these shirts? I have the Conscious Resistance shirts right here. These are the Conscious Resistance logo. I've got a bunch that say you are powerful, you are beautiful, you are free, and more coming in. And I'm trying to get those shipped to people around the U.S. and get a dealer in the U.K. to get some of those people out there. But if you want one of these shirts, let me know. I'll print some more. And I'll remind you again, follow us on the Conscious Resistance Network. Follow us on theconsciousresistance.com. Last couple things here. Please tell me, raise your hand, give me a sad or an angry face if you're listening and you watched the debate. Because I'm sad if you did. Because I watched about 15, 20 minutes of it to start with. Yeah, I did. I did for a minute. And that was all I needed to see. Because if you didn't watch the debate, you didn't miss anything. If you listened to Hillary and Donald the Clown talk shit to each other for the last year, then you saw it all. There's nothing else to see. But I want to suggest that when these debates come up, I almost thought about doing a video called, here's what to do instead of a debate, or I was going to do this really creative video where I had the debate playing and you could see over my shoulder people watching me watch the debate and laughing at it. But honestly, at the end of the day, I'm like, wait, do I even want to contribute to this conversation? Do I want to talk to my viewers and supporters about the debate? Can't I find more interesting and empowering topics to talk about other than like, hey, look at these idiots argue with each other? The only thing I was going to say is really, we can empower each other better than these people can. It's a freaking show. Again, when the media presents you one thing, there's usually multiple layers to it. So the debate is just a freaking distraction. I don't give a shit if Donald Trump's microphone is working or not, or if he made fun of Miss Universe. Like, he's a dick. And I'm still under the belief that Donald Trump is actually playing a role. He's helping Hillary Clinton get elected. There's probably something bigger going on that we'll see unfold really quickly, but I don't believe that Donald Trump is as dumb as he is playing himself out to be. The moments that I did watch, they did press Donald Trump to, they said, okay, you say you're going to create jobs. How do you plan to create more jobs? And he said something along the lines of, oh, well, we're going to win. It's going to be great. We're going to create so many more jobs, and we're going to do that by putting people back to work. Something like that, right? And I mean, there had to be some people around Donald Trump saying, okay, this whole time you've been talking about plans and people have been talking shit to you saying you have nothing to back it up. So tonight, Donald, has to be the night where you actually give them the plans. We can't go out there with nothing. Somebody had to have said that to him. Yet, again, on the biggest stage, while there's millions of people watching the circus, he provides nothing of value. And people still support him. But I don't believe that is happening by mistake. It just seems so scripted. All of this. There's so much of our world these days that I question and feel like is just a script. But here's some good news. According to USA Today College, it says less than half of millennials say that they're definitely voting in November. I mean, can I get some thumbs up and round of applause, hearts for that? Less than half of millennials, age 18 to 29. I think I'm considered a millennial. I'm in the older end of some millennial groups because I'm 30. In fact, only 41% of millennials age 18 to 29 say they're absolutely certain that they're going to vote. 15% say they will probably vote. I mean, so you got less than half people saying nah, maybe. And then another 50% said probably. They can't even, nobody's excited about this. And thank you. Here come the hearts. Here come the thumbs up. Yes. Fuck these people and their faulty system. I mean, I know some people, they hear this Derrick, why don't you use your platform to tell people to vote? We can just, or go run for office, go run for city council. We need to encourage these people to get in there and change things. It's not going to change. I'm sorry. I'm glad there's a lot of beautiful people out there who think that they're going to fix things from within. I'll see you in 10 years when you're broken down, beaten down, worn out, and you've either become corrupted because that's all you can do to try to achieve change within that system, or you've recognized there's no fucking way to change that thing from within. So how do we change it then? I don't like talking about negativity. I don't like talking about all this police violence and the DAPL and the reverse drug stings and 9/11 and the food without giving you solutions. If you've listened to my talks before, if you've listened to my work, you know I believe in something called counter-economics. I believe in something called agorism. Even if you never read the books, the New Libertarian Manifesto, if you don't like the word libertarian, if you don't want to look into that, all it means is this. You don't vote. You don't vote with electoral politics. You vote with your actions. So again, back to the food. You don't want to support those Monsanto seeds? Stop buying their products. Start going to farmers who refuse to use them. Start growing your own food. Build community gardens. Support local community gardens. Support backyard gardens. Support school gardens. Teach kids about it. Vote with your actions. Get involved in your community and some activist group or some community group doing good things. Start your own. Get out there and just talk to people. There's so many different things you can do. I know there's a lot of people in different situations, and I have people reach out to me and say, how can I get involved? I don't like to write. I don't do the things that you do, but I want to be involved. And I've racked my brain really trying to come up with an answer for everyone. But I think at the end of the day, what it comes down to is finding something that makes you happy. Spreading awareness about the world, it fills my heart with joy in ways that I could never find anywhere else, or at least that I haven't been able to find anywhere else. I believe that by choosing to use as much of my time and devote it to the things and the cause that I care about, that's what I find fulfilling. That's what allows me to wake up every day and say, oh my God, it's a beautiful day and I'm thankful to be alive because I get to choose to change this world. I get to choose to change myself. And I don't have to wait for presidents to do it. I don't have to wait for a ballot on November 8th. I don't have to wait for anybody. I don't have to wait for 2020. I can do it right now. And so can you. Every day we make a choice. Right now we're choosing to either hear the words that I'm saying and to dispute them or to discard them or to take them in and to reflect upon them, to sit back and say, maybe I am making choices. Maybe my choices are creating the world that I have. And maybe if I'm not happy with the world that I have, I need to rethink the choices I'm making. I need to rethink my relationships. I need to rethink my strategies and my actions. So agorism, counter-economics, strictly is just about finding the areas of the world that you don't like and replacing it with things that you do. Not by going and voting and asking government to do it. Not by going and, using violence or trying to persuade everyone, but building. Find your tribe. Find your freedom cell, freedomcells.org, and build, guys. Build. We need to do this together. I still have so much hope and faith in this country, but we are definitely in an interesting time. And I've had a lot of conversations with activists from some of the big websites and big pages in the independent alternative media who are really just at a point of like, holy shit, guys, what are we going to do? And at the end of the day, we recognize that this is a momentous opportunity to seize upon. There are so many people who are dissatisfied. Half of millennial voters don't even want to. They don't even care. They don't want to be involved anymore. Maybe because they believed in Bernie Sanders, but it's time to seize that opportunity to say, hey, guess what? There is another way. It doesn't involve voting. It doesn't involve violence. And it doesn't involve apathy either, because non-voting is not apathy. Just because you don't vote in that ballot box doesn't mean you're not voting every day with your actions, your words, and the choices that you make. So I ask you guys today, Friday, September 30th, to make a choice to vote right now with your actions and with your mind and with your heart. Make a choice to be a more conscious person, to dig through your own bullshit, to figure out your doubts, insecurities, and fears, and to work on those things so that you can empower yourself and be the self-actualized, beautiful human being that you're meant to be. And then encourage that everywhere you go. Encourage that in every person that you see. And continue to educate your mind about philosophy, about world events, and to look beyond that veil and to understand that we can truly create a better world. We can create something much better than what we have seen and what we have been given. But it's going to take action, and it has to start right now. Thank you guys for joining me today. I want to remind you guys one more time to please go check out theconsciousresistance.com right here, and the Conscious Resistance Network on Facebook. Follow YouTube, Twitter, all that, yada, yada, yada. I'm going to be deactivating my Facebook again, but please follow me at derrickbroze.contently.com. That's where all my journalism is. You can find me on Twitter, and if you want text alerts, let me know. I very much appreciate you guys. Remember, you are beautiful, you are powerful, you are free. Peace.